and the government needs to make this payment. Mr. Speaker, I would have ended there, but I want to say one more thing before I take my seat. Mr. Speaker, government agencies, and starting with the Attorney General, they budget for their own expenditures, they budget for the salaries and whatever in their line budgets. But, Mr. Speaker, they don't put money to fund legal or contingent legal liabilities. They don't. And this goes even to parastatals. And, Mr. Speaker, this must change to be fair to people in this republic. People have litigation against the Attorney General. Those of us who have practiced law, we know that we have litigation against Attorney General, against the government. But when you secure your victory, it is called a paper victory. Because yes, you will get your judgment, but you cannot execute that judgment. And, Mr. Speaker, we ought to change this. This particular approach to budgeting needs to change. We need to tweak it. And we need to say it in this floor of the House. Parastatals need to budget for legal contingent liabilities that may occur in case the parastatal is sued. They need to put money aside so that they can satisfy judgments that come against their acts. Same for the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, I know that if KCC had put aside some money, I am sure at the time that the judgment was obtained, during that lapse period between the time that the appeal was filed and the appeal was executed, the 5-year period, they would have paid if they had this legal contingent fund that is supposed to satisfy liabilities that can arise. So, Mr. Speaker, without wanting to repeat what my colleagues have said, I want to support this report, but I wish that the chair can find a way to twerk the report so that there is a clear recommendation, binding recommendation that says, despite all this, this report is recommending that the workers be paid on ex gratia basis. And, Mr. Speaker, one of the things, finally, that has come out here is that the workers were making payments, they were being deducted, and payments were being made to government bodies, Provident Fund, or whatever. But these payments were not reaching those bodies. Mr. Speaker, as senators, we need to be very alert and worried about this because it is a trend. I know my county, Mr. Speaker, under the current governor, they deduct workers in Tana River County. They deduct them viciously, Mr. Speaker, from their payslip, but they do not submit these deductions to the government bodies. So the workers are denied. It is unjust, Mr. Speaker. It is wrong, but governors are doing it. And I know the governor of Tana River is doing it. And they are so shameful, you know. It's very shameful that what they do is this to our workers in the county. Because, Mr. Speaker, some of these governors, Mr. Speaker, they employ people even to carry their chairs, you know, for functions. So even people who are doing personal service, your drivers, you are not remitting these things and you are deducting them and you laugh with them. You spend all your days with them. It's a shame. Mr. Speaker, I always ask myself how some counties, we end up with characters like this who occupy executive positions. I always wonder what we can do to make sure that although the executive position, we are supposed to have elected people, but we must twerk it in such a way that this is seriously not just a political position. People just play politics here, politics there, and then they are elected. And then they are totally incompetent. They cannot account for monies that come to them. They oppress the workers, threaten them, and then they hold seminars and threaten them. If you don't do this, or workers, you are going to see this. The normal statements that are done after Christmas on the first week of January. Then after that, they disappear because they have to take trips so that they can earn per diem. Shame on these governors, Mr. Speaker. That's what they do to our workers. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to use the floor of this House to ask the Tana River County government and other governors, please remit what you deduct from the workers. It is wrong. It is wrong. And this makes devolution look so bad because you are devolving some of the bad habits that are in the national government, some of the bad habits that are even in parastatals like KCC, who went down with 205 million of poor people who are working for them, who made them profits, who made KCC to be the giant that it was before it collapsed. And so, Mr. Speaker, with those 3 points, I beg to support this report and ask that the chair, the Honorable Chairman Murgor and his team, will find a way of making a compelling recommendation that they can hold on to, not what all the members who have spoken before me have said. The recommendations are not sticking to something that these workers can say, we went to the Senate and came out with something. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity.
It's Madam Speaker, but it's fine. Senator Richard Onyonka.
Madam Speaker, I'm actually happy to be on this floor to make contribution to this important matter. The reason is that I think amongst the very many issues that I've brought forth, either publicly at the media or even in this House, is actually about this matter of payments which, even currently, are supposed to be remitted to either employees who worked for our government, who worked for government parastatals, who worked for private companies in our republic. Somehow, the trend that you look and observe is that there seems to be a consistency on how this money, which was meant to be deductions as retirement benefits for our people, whether the money was going to be given as gratuity for our people, whether money was actually supposed to be paid through the county governments so that the workers who have worked in these institutions can receive their legitimate dues. Madam Speaker, I've also been looking at why we treat our people so casually. I have always wondered that, and in fact, Madam Speaker, I really want to thank my brother, Honorable Mungatana, and Senator Olekina for their very impassioned plea on this matter. Because we seem to very casually treat these monies that are owned by employees, whether they're, as I've said earlier, whether they're working for the national government. I don't have the evidence whether there were any who have worked for this National Assembly or rather Parliament, but I know Parliament has been behaving reasonably well recently. But previously, these were issues where we had some of our colleagues coming to this National Assembly for more than 6 or 7 years, chasing after their retirement benefits. And Madam Speaker, the point I want to make is that even if you look at this money that we are talking about, which is supposed to be the deductions for our people. You can extrapolate it, and my colleagues, look at the other compensatory issues that have been raised in this house. Number one, the ex-bomb blast people. We allow these people to go to court. They go there, and of course, given one, the statute under which these bomb blasts took place here was not going to be accommodative, because at that time we didn't even have the platform on how we could argue and make these people compensated. Even some of them have done this through the Kenya Human Rights Commission. But our institutions, and I call these institutions the National Assembly, or rather Parliament, has been unable to come up with what my brother, Honorable Mungatana, is talking about. Can we agree that there are certain compensations that cannot be done within the law? Why? Because some of these things have gone beyond their statute of limitations. Some of them should be based on human right basis. And some of them should just be based on common sense. If somebody was the sole income earner who was selling items outside the bomb blast, and the bomb blew up our people because somebody was trying to attack Kenya for being friendly to the United States of America, and then 50 or 30% of the individuals who were blown in that bomb are compensated, and those ones who lost, who have the post-bomb traumatic experiences, where some of them till today talk about how they are not able even to sleep, and it's been over 30 years. Surely we need to come up with a mechanism within the law on how we can compensate our people. Number two, it is true, the deductions which most probably were being done for those employees who are working at KICC and did not get to the statutory body that was supposed to have paid the employees was eaten by certain individuals. The truth is, these individuals were never followed. The truth is, the law was never used so that either we could recover this money or even make sense on what to do with the people who are not receiving their money. And of course, my colleagues have ably and wonderfully stated here, like Honorable Mungatana has again graciously raised the issue. Look at the way how some of our governors behave. They are unable to pay gratuity to people who've worked for them and they've moved. They are completely leave alone the political mismanagement of the workers in their county governments because they believe that some of these individuals were not loyal enough to them. Some of these people who even left some county governments some 3, 4, 5 years ago, Madam Speaker, have never received their payments. And why then, as a house, don't we come up with resolutions on how, one, those individuals who have faced injustice, let them get compensation through a government mechanism which this house can sit and actually draft. Number two, if there are county governments that have been unable to release funds, which most of them are not releasing those funds, I believe that we can actually pass a moratorium in this house or a memorandum of actually asking the controller of budget to make sure that the payments which are supposed to go to these employees become the first charge. Finally, I had my colleague raise a question. How did we get such irresponsible people that are not able to look at Kenyans in terms of their capacity, in terms of their exposure, in terms of their human rights, in terms of their legality, where we actually refuse people to get their money after working for 25, 30, 40 years in an institution, and many of these institutions were actually bankrupted. Then an excuse is given. It's the same thing. I think we saw Jomo Kenyatta Referral Hospital having the same issue, where people who used to work under the auspices of the World Bank are not receiving payments so that they can be released to go and do other things. And there are many other institutions like that. So what we are saying, Madam Speaker, is this. Yes, we can do all these reports like the one that has just come here, which is done extremely well. But our recommendations are always weak. And it's because we've always thought in this house that we don't have enough teeth to come up and implement some of these recommendations. And therefore, I'm seeking and persuading my colleagues in this House that let us take whatever that we find that is not functioning and we begin to fix it so that it can make Kenyans receive their right, receive their payments, if it is their ex gratia payments, whether it is their family payments, whatever payments they make, we make sure that some of these things are done according to the statutory period, so that our people can begin to say that government and even the corporate sector, even all the economy of Kenya is an economy that is friendly to its workforce, because once you work and finish and you finish your years well and you take care of the responsibility you had, then naturally you should receive your compensation as your retirement benefit and your historical benefit. And therefore, Madam Speaker, my opinion is that I think, like my colleagues have said, let us begin through our committees to interrogate those issues that we are failing to implement. Once the recommendations are made in this House, seems like nothing actually is followed up. Even when we get some of the audit reports that have recently come up, where you find individuals, you know, are being informed, Madam Speaker, that as far as Kenya is, our country is okay, doesn't have any challenges. Some of these things are the ones which make Kenyans really angry. And unfortunately, Madam Speaker, they might even blame the current government, and yet the issue is not really with the current government. I think this is an issue that historically and perennially been with the government of the day, that we do not treat our people with dignity, we don't treat Kenyans as real Kenyans, and we don't handle Kenyans the way we should. And Madam Speaker, I want to raise an issue which I saw where a member of parliament of Kituru Chache South, Anthony Kibagendi, is being vilified, and in fact the House has decided that he has not behaved very well by him publicly mentioning that basically as members of parliament, even the Senate, we are becoming useless. That's the indictment that the public out here keeps raising about us. And the reason is we need to capture the mood. We need to understand what Kenyans want. Those things that don't need politics, can't we fix them? I don't see how individuals who are complaining why they are not being paid their retirement benefits, how this can be politics. Surely we can sit in this House, set up a subcommittee, which is a given permission or through the statutory powers of the Labour Committee, and make recommendations, and those recommendations are final and binding. And we can seek consultation with the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal and the High Court, and make sure that any of the laws we pass cannot be contradictory. And yet we operate like everything is normal. And yet our people don't get payments from the statutory bodies that were supposed to pay them. And yet we understand some of this money was actually stolen. The people who stole the money are not held accountable. So, Madam Speaker, I'd like to say that I agree with the report and I appreciate the good work they have done, but we need to look for a way. And I remember there was a time when the Speaker made a ruling and said, stop complaining that you don't have the teeth. Can we now begin to build the teeth in this House which can make Kenya a country that is governed and is respected the way it treats its workforce? With those few remarks, I want to say thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support.
Senator Wakili Sigei.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also weigh into the report of the committee. I first, from the very onset, wish to appreciate the effort that this committee took into giving us what we are discussing today. Madam Speaker, I have gone through the recommendations, and as we appreciate the work that the committee did in establishing the historical background where the former employees of KCC, having won in their first attempt before the High Court the case to claim for their dues, they lost in the Court of Appeal. To the extent that then the Court of Appeal, besides overturning the decision that had given them the entitlement, it did state that they were entitled to certain payments and directed the Office of the Attorney General to see the mechanism within which these former employees were to be paid. Madam Speaker, this petition has been filed before this House on the strength of the constitutional provisions of Article 119 that mandates this House to do what is within its powers, either to legislate, to amend, or to repeal any statute or law. And in this case, part of what we as a House have as a mandate is to find a solution to support such vulnerable former employees who felt that coming to this House was giving them a recourse to get the entitlement. The assumption that that petitioner made when they were filing before this court, before this House, the petition, is that they will get to be paid. And having heard them, because from the report you will notice that the committee did engage these petitioners, it engaged the Office of the Attorney General, it engaged so many other stakeholders. The report, in terms of its recommendation, in my view, ought to have done better than it did by recommending certain policy statements. Actually, the recommendation that the interministerial committee that was set up by the cabinet secretary in relevant ministry to report within 6 months does not give the petitioner what they expected when they were filing the petition before this House. Assuming that that interministerial committee recommends that they are not entitled, their coming to this House was that resort of the last, saying we will get our entitlement here. They will not get if the interministerial committee were only to say, unfortunately, the finding of the Court of Appeal was that the new entity that took over from KCC is not liable to pay. Secondly, the policy framework, which they gave out as their second recommendation, is futuristic. Admittedly, yes, that is supposed to be the way to go. What remedy are we giving these petitioners as a House, as Parliament, that petitioners came in seeking for support? And so, in support of what the rest of the members have said, the committee ought to have gone out of its way to facilitate an ex gratia payment, to facilitate a support to these former employees whose contributions and deductions were remitted or not remitted. I have not been in a position to read the facts in the matter that was before the court, but the bottom line is they were entitled to, as former employees, for whatever benefits that they contributed through the scheme and through the former employer, to be repaid or to be paid upon retirement or upon the dissolution of the former employer. So I really wish that the committee had been very clear and straightforward in its recommendation. But all is not lost, Madam Speaker, because even as we adopt this report, the committee still has given itself a window within which to follow up the recommendations they have made, both with the Office of the Attorney General as well as the Cabinet Secretary of the relevant ministry. I wish that in their follow-up processes, they undertake to highlight the fact that even as the interministerial committee pursues a recommendation on their part in terms of how else can they pay, they should stand firm in ensuring that this over 204 million, which is actually money that was established to have been deducted and remitted from the salaries of these former members of Maziwa Sacco, that money should not be lost, because whether or not a matter went to court, these deductions were from the salaries of those employees, and they must then get it back because it is their entitlement. This conversation relates largely, Madam Speaker, to what we received from the Office of the Auditor General's report to our various county governments, where county governments deduct from salaries of many of their employees, whether it is for purposes of NSSF, NHIF, or even to those established schemes. That deduction is made on their payslip, but then they are not remitted. And therefore, when the Auditor General flags out those things, we have got over some, I think, 104 billion outstanding remittances in almost all the 47 counties. The biggest question which the Auditor General and which this House also asked when they were looking through those statements is that where do this money go and who will pay these former employees if they are not remitted even after deduction, because a number of them have gone into pending bills. And the Office of the Auditor General, though having flagged them, has only raised that these are red flags to mismanagement, to corruption, and to unjust treatment of employees who are working for county governments. Their salaries have, their deduction have been made, but not remitted. So even as we support this particular recommendation by the committee, the same should be sounded on our county governments where deductions have been made. They should be remitted, because we will, Madam Speaker, be dealing with almost a similar petition in a few years to come, where former employees of county governments are saying our salaries were deducted but not remitted, and therefore cannot benefit from that. So as we appreciate the work of the committee and also the recommendations they've made, we should, as a House, be looking at a recommendation that is implementable, a recommendation that will not discourage members of public from filing petitions before this House, and a recommendation that will also highlight the specific responsible government agencies to honor their commitment. And in this case, we look forward to, in the follow-up by the committee, having the interministerial committee being pressed to ensure that these deductions are remitted ultimately to the former employees, whether or not a finding of the court had exonerated the new KCC from the liability of these former employees. Madam Speaker, I congratulate the Honorable Chairman and his members of the committee for the work they did, save for those few comments which I wish, in their pursuit to follow up, ensure that they pin down to the inter-ministerial committee's work in their implementation of the committee. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Veronica Maina.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to reign and speak into this matter. The report that has been presented to this Senate by the Labour Committee. Let me commend the committee for a job well done, having looked at the facts of the matter, held several meetings, and ensured that they have come back to the House with solutions to the employees, former employees of KCC. It is very sad, Honorable Speaker, that we are discussing this matter today in the light that it appears, because I am certain that there are former KCC employees who have cried, mourned over their lost terminal dues. And this should not have been. But I'm also happy to note they have taken the right action. They have petitioned Parliament, having realized that under Article 119 of the Constitution, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including to enact, amend, or repeal any legislation. So they have exercised their constitutional right. And this is the way to go. Any citizen that is really aggrieved, or a group of people in Kenya who are really aggrieved do have a right to exercise this Article 119 and present their petitions, present their views, or present their lamentations to Parliament. And Parliament is also mandated under the Constitution to ensure that they provide, to ensure that we provide solution to the people. And further, under Section 5.2 of the petition to Parliament, a petition that is tabled in Parliament under this Act shall be considered in accordance with the standing order of the relevant House. So this committee sat, and they've done a good job. They have brought here 4 recommendations, if that is what I have seen, 4 recommendations before the Senate, having considered a matter that was heavily adjudicated in court, and definitely, in spite of judgments being rendered and an opinion being given by the Court of Appeal, the workers, the former workers of KCC, are still in distress. Notably, the KCB Bank is the one that handled the receivership of the old KCC. And it is important that the committee has noted in one of the recommendations that the receivership regulations must now be tightened. Why? Because if a receiver is already transferring the assets and the liabilities of a company to a new formation, that is the new KCC, the question we ask ourselves, does the receiver not have a duty to disclose to the new company that is taking up the ownership of the old entity? Do they not have a right to disclose the assets and the liabilities, the full set of liabilities that is due, and that would definitely and naturally transfer to the new entity? So I find there is a very big gap there, and I would call upon the receivers, because they are also, banks of repute like KCC, that when they are handling their mandate as receivers, it will behove on them, because they are also public entities that are quoted in the stock exchange. It behoves on them to act in utmost good faith and protect and defend every right that is being claimed from the old entity or the entity under receivership. So it calls us to focus a lot on the role of a receiver. And when we are focusing on the role of a receiver, we know very well, Honorable Speaker, there is no entity that can succeed well without considering or just thinking deeply on how the workforce and the human resource is being treated. Because I think, Honorable Speaker, there is no company that would succeed fully until they take care of their workforce. So when KCB dealt with the receivership of KCC, they should have taken the aspect of human resource as a critical resource within that entity. They should have taken it much more seriously than they did. And I think we need to tighten the regulations and the rules just in line with the recommendation that has been given by the committee. Honorable Speaker, I note that the petitioners have not just come straight to Parliament. They didn't just show up in Senate. They went to court. They petitioned in petition number 1299 of 2013, and Justice Wasilwa granted an order that New KCC Limited was liable to pay the former employees. And the New KCC appealed, and at an appeal level, the former employees of KCC lost. And I'm sure those employees are now asking themselves, where is justice in all this? And the question we must ask ourselves, in spite of the changes of the company from the old KCC to the new entity KCC, was the claim due? And who gets to pay this claim? What is the role of the receiver? The committee has made recommendations. In this recommendation, they have recommended that the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister of Cooperatives to fast-track an ex gratia payment to these KCC employees, to the former KCC employees. I support this recommendation, Honorable Speaker. I fully support it. Why? Because they must not be held liable, or they must not be the losers in a transaction where assets and liabilities of a company were transferred to a new entity without full disclosure by the receiver, Honorable Speaker. And I'm sure in this receivership, The Attorney General's office was involved. What was the role of the Attorney General office in giving advisory to the receiver? What did they do? And how did they conduct their affairs? And that gap, who gets to pay contributions that were deducted from these former employees but not remitted even to Provident Fund? This is very wrong corporate behavior, Honorable Speaker. And indeed, all government entities must be held to account fully. If they do any deductions for employees, those deductions must be remitted. And I think one of the things that need to be done, compliance on a monthly basis, so that we do not have discussions like the one we are having now today. Any deduction that is done from employees, even private entities, must be remitted to the relevant authorities, Honorable Speaker. Because then we will find a class of workers who worked for government, which should have been very prestigious. Working for a government corporation or an entity is prestigious across the whole world, Honorable Speaker. Anybody who works for government anywhere is always given very high regard because they represent government. So imagine employees then working in the public sector, serving the people, holding up for a company and working and slogging for years, then their money is deducted, and an entity feels it is okay not to remit those deductions, and actually fails to remit 1 month, 2 months, 10 months, a whole year, and they are not remitting. Are they above the law? Should they not comply with the basic laws that have been set, actually to support the government of the day? I think it should be embarrassing for us to be discussing deductions that have been effected from human capital and not remitted. They should be remitted, Honorable Speaker. So I believe the committee was on its right tracks to recommend that there should be a time-bound settlement plan for the former KCC employees, and I fully support that, and that our committees now must become strong enough to be able to oversight on such issues so that when these recommendations are done, then they are effected in a timely fashion. Then there is another recommendation for ensuring that we have mandatory benefit ring fencing during asset transfers. That should be automatic. Even before we do regulations that are more tightened for the receivers, it behoves on the receiver. A credible receiver like KCB must ensure that every interest in the matter that they are dealing with on the table and the receivership issues they are dealing with on the table must be attended to, even for their credibility. Because how do you ignore a whole workforce that has a whole claim, which is in the tune of 204 million shillings? It is not 2 pence, Honorable Speaker. And even if it may not appear too big for the entities that are transferring shares and changing hands in the management of the company, it means a whole big, it's a big issue to the employees, and it means a lot to their welfare. So, Honorable Speaker, I believe after these conversations we have had and the debate that we are having today, there should be a solution for the former employees. And then I see recommendation number 4, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and Director of Criminal Investigation, within 6 months of tabling of this report, to investigate mismanagement and funds misappropriation by former KCC directors, particularly the cash 400 million loan that caused the company's collapse. You know, Honorable Speaker, if such a recommendation is left unattended to, that will be gross misconduct, both on EACC and even the former management of the KCC directors. Why, Honorable Speaker? Because if this amounted to the collapse of a whole company, many employees losing their livelihoods, now their providence, their terminal dues are at risk, the courts are awarding, the courts are giving a repeal on the decision on their award. They are busy in a Sacco somewhere, not knowing where their claim will ever land into. And then we have another group of people who have misappropriated 400 million shillings loan that causes the collapse of a whole company. That means, Honorable Speaker, that those KCC, former KCC directors are economic saboteurs and they should be dealt with. That is a case which the former employees and even Kenyans would be keen to see what happens to such people. What happens to this recommendation? So I believe when we call the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in the Senate JLAC committee, the next time they come, I believe the chair who is in the House today, we will take this report and make sure they respond and account on what they will have done. So I hope the House will serve this report to the EACC so that we see an end to this matter. And it should sound a warning to other public officers who are managing resources that we cannot have mismanagement and misappropriation that sends many families into chaos with loss of job. That means loss of their livelihoods. It means a loss of school fees for children. It means a lot. It has a lot of many other, chain effect. It triggers a ripple effect in the welfare of families in Kenya, and I believe it should be tackled and dealt with. Honorable Speaker, I want to congratulate the committee for being strong in this matter, and I want to pray and hope that by the time we touch this report again, that the KCC, the former KCC employees, will be a community that can smile and say that honestly, Parliament works. Because Parliament is the foundational and institutional guardian and custodian of human rights. It's the final stop for accessing any elusive rights and for helping citizens to access human rights through legislative action, budgetary allocation, and even oversight action over the executive. It is in Parliament where you can find the interface of dealing with the executive, the ministries, and the interface of dealing with any legislative gaps that could have caused any breach of human rights. And that is why, for these former employees to bring this matter to the Senate, it was the right action. And we urge any Kenyan to know that Parliament exists to serve you. Parliament exists to ensure that your human rights are enforced, they are upheld, they are respected, and that you can enjoy the dignity that you deserve to enjoy as a citizen of the Republic of Kenya. So do not go to the streets, and if you go to the streets, do not be armed or do not cause demonstrations that cause destruction of any lives or destruction of any property. You can actually approach Parliament through a petition, and you will find tangible action that causes the human rights, the redress of the human rights that have been breached in your life. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I want to wish former KCC employees all the best as they pursue their rights. But from Senate, we will try to do what we can to ensure that the compensation that slipped through your fingers and out of your hands when you went to court and in the Court of Appeal can finally be redressed, and that you can find your compensation coming back to your pockets. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Beatrice Ogola.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to add my voice to this petition that was done by one Mr. Bernard Kananda. And from the onset, Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Mr. Bernard for taking courage on behalf of the suffering former employees of KCC that have not gotten their benefits, Madam Speaker, that were due to them at that time. Madam Speaker, as I rise to make this presentation, I want to remind Kenyans that we have just begun the Lenten period, and it is a time of forgiveness, Madam Speaker. It's a time of giving. And Madam Speaker, giving is not limited to giving in kind. Madam Speaker, it is a time that we should reflect in a number of issues in our country and in the world. it is a time of watching what you say, Madam Speaker, to others in the family, in the community, and in the spaces where we are. It is a time of thinking about the less fortunate in the society. And Madam Speaker, we wish everybody well in the country and in the world. Madam Speaker, as I begin also this presentation, I have a broken heart. Madam Speaker, just last week in my ward, in my village, we lost one such retired personality, one Boniface Okeyo, from Kosewe, Kanyamwa Kosewe ward, from my village, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, this gentleman was a retired public officer who had not received dues, who had not received his pension. And Madam Speaker, why my heart is broken is that this gentleman had gone through the suffering that equally, the suffering that the former employees of KCC had gone through. This gentleman didn't even have fare, Madam Speaker, to follow those dues in Nairobi, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, finally he got a lift in a lorry. The operator of that lorry was gracious enough to grant him a lift to Nairobi. One wonders how, when he finally would arrive in Nairobi, if he didn't have fare, how he was going to operate. But Madam Speaker, that is the story of most of the retired public servants, because they have waited for so long for their pension. Boniface left his home with his bag. Madam Speaker, Boniface did not arrive because that lorry got an accident and he lost his life somewhere around Nyansiongo. Madam Speaker, if Boniface had gotten his benefits, he would probably have never gone through what he went through. And just today, Boniface is a fellow Catholic. I know today he would have attended Ash Wednesday at the Mirogi Parish Church. May his soul rest in peace. Madam Speaker, I congratulate Mr. Bernard Kananda, and I sympathize, Madam Speaker, with the former employees that they have not gotten their benefits, even though the courts have stated so. But the worst part of it, Madam Speaker, that even their contributions that they made to Maziwa Sacco, they have also not been able to get. All of us here who work for the public are either as public officers, as state officers, or as employees. We sacrifice to save some money with our SACCOs, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm a teacher by profession. And over the years, I've saved some money with Mwalimu Sacco, even before I joined Parliament, in the hope that once when I need that money, I should be able to get it, to access it in a timely manner, because it is monies that I've saved, it is monies that are due to me. And Madam Speaker, that is the same story we want to hear wherever other Kenyans are working, at whatever level, that what you save in a Sacco, you should have access to. What the benefits that you have as employees, you must have access to. And I want to congratulate this committee of labor for taking this matter head on. Madam Speaker, at the ICT committee sometimes back, a predicament of the same nature was brought to our attention of the poster employees who had not gotten their salaries for months, Madam Speaker. And because of the deliberation of ICT, we even had to invite Treasury to our meeting and the Ministry of ICT then, and a commitment was made, and those employees were able to get their payment. It is on the same note, Madam Speaker, that this Senate must ensure that the former KCC employees finally get their terminal benefits and the contributions that they made to the Sacco, Madam Speaker. It is also very unfortunate that the government had disbursed this compensation to KCC limited stakeholders. Madam Speaker, but these workers continue to suffer. As we talk about the suffering, I know a number of them have also suffered and lost their lives. Madam Speaker, we know that as people age, their medical requirements increase. And in which other way would you meet your medical obligations if it is not from the benefits that are due to you having worked for it? So I know even as we are talking, Madam Speaker, some of the benefits we are pushing here are benefits that are going to be paid when a number of these employees have lost their lives. And we must shame ourselves. And Madam Speaker, we have a government. Our government must stamp its foot to ensure that workers get their dues and benefits that they work for. And that is why I'm happy with the recommendations, some of the recommendations that are here, that we must ring-fence the benefits of workers, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, some of the recommendations speak to what the ideal situation. And this need not to have come from recommendations, Madam Speaker, because these are the rights of our people. Timeliness of settlement of benefits. And we should also have an automatic compensation system, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, I ask myself, as we deliberate over this, where is the AG? The AG has a role in all this, Madam Speaker. We are talking about the public. Madam Speaker, as my colleagues have also argued here, that is the kind of situation that is going to face even a number of our employees in the county governments. Senate is here to look at the interest and protect those interests of our county employees. We must go ahead, and this committee must go ahead to also just oversee over the period, even as the workers have not retired, that are their benefits safe? Will they be given in a timely manner? Are they ring-fenced? But above all, the Saccos which our people save a number of their monies, are those Saccos regulated, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, as I speak here, I know there must be a regulator of the Saccos. They must ensure that what people contribute in terms of their savings are safe, Madam Speaker. And we should go even ahead. This committee must get a regular yearly audited auditors report that must capture those issues that we are talking about. So, Madam Speaker, I support and I feel that the recommendations must be tighter. We must ring fence, as I've said.
Senator Beatrice, would you like to be informed by Senator Veronica?
Yes. Madam Speaker, I accept to be informed. It's only a fool that refuses to be informed, Madam Speaker.
Senator Veronica.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just to inform and contribute to add to the richness of the debate, that yes, those Saccos are, it's to inform, those Saccos are regulated, they have SASRA. So there is no reason for any Sacco not to have the money firmly available for the workers. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I thank my sister and former SG for that information, that the regulator is there. But the question I ask myself, even in the presence of the regulator, what has the regulator done over this case? That the regulator must stamp their feet, the regulator must regulate all Saccos, Madam Speaker, I'm pained because, as I say, I'm a teacher, and years back, we used to have a Sacco for teachers in the greater southern Nyanza called Sonyanko. At some point, that Sacco ran into some problems, Madam Speaker, and I saw the plight of teachers that included my parents. I saw the plight of teachers, and that is why we are pained if Saccos do not take care of contributors' resources. At that time, Madam Speaker, teachers would get small loans when schools were opening, because that is when teachers would pay for school fee. So, Madam Speaker, I remember my parents and other parents then would line up at the Sacco. If they didn't get the loans, Madam Speaker, it meant that we would not go to school among with other children of the teachers. Madam Speaker, I pride myself and I say I'm a daughter of a teacher, a wife of a teacher, and a teacher too. So, and that is why I say we must stamp our foot in the regulations of the Saccos. Madam Speaker, this is an unfortunate happening. Although the discussion is timely, we must then rescue other employees. And Madam Speaker, I support this petition, and I would like to say that the recommendations must be looked into. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Crystal Kegehi Asige.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to this very important petition. And though we've had fellow colleagues talk about it and debate on it, I must also give a disclaimer that I am in the Committee for Labor and Social Protection, and I sit here as the Vice Chair. So this is something that we have been looking into for several months, as you see in the report before us. This is why I will make my contribution brief. However, I still wanted to underscore some of the issues that came up throughout this investigation and implore and beseech the relevant ministries to put an end to this particular petition on behalf of Mr. Bernard Kananda and the rest of the petitioners. Madam Speaker, this is a story. It's quite simple. It's a story of very earnest, very honest, very hardworking Kenyans. So I think that all Kenyans, even if they're not directly involved in this petition, can relate to the story that we have before us. Young people, they were young people in 1997. They were in their 30s and 40s when they were caught in the midst of a restructuring of what is now known as a former KCC and the current new KCC. These employers had nothing to do with that restructuring, but of course they had to follow suit to support the development and the new way forward that was seen by those leading this particular organization. And Speaker, it's unfortunate that between 1997, when they were just maybe 30, 40 years old, and almost 30 years later, we're now in 2026. They are in their 70s and their 80s, still waiting for their human rights and their dues to be given to them. That is staggeringly unfortunate. And this is something that I expressed throughout our investigation in the Committee for Labor and Social Welfare, because this is not the first time, Madam Speaker. You will know that this is not the first time they've brought this petition to the Senate. They brought it in this parliament that we are a part of now, but also in previous parliaments to the Committee on Labor in those times. And still, it is painful to have to see people who are my elders, my grandparents, having to come back and forth from their homes, from as far as the county I was born in, Mombasa, to the county that I originally am from, which is Vihiga, and beyond, still coming back, begging, pleading, beseeching us as parliamentarians and the ministries and the regime that is here today to just give them what they are owed. It is quite a simple story, but unfortunately it's one that too many Kenyans experience and can see themselves in. Madam Speaker, you'll see in this report that they are asking for close to 205 million shillings that is due to them, including the interests accrued since 1997 when the restructuring happened. Because their only crime was to be loyal employers and to be patient with the system. They have been patiently waiting for the system to catch up with their human rights, Madam Speaker. And it's us who is really contributing painfully to what they've had to experience for almost 30 years, waiting and waiting and waiting. Madam Speaker, this 205 million is not just a number. It shows, or it should demonstrate, the agony that has been felt by them and their families and their extended families for almost 30 years. And I wish that the Minister for Cooperatives, together with the Minister for Labor, and other ministries, including the National Treasury, who we spoke to in this investigation. We also met with the Attorney General. I wish that they would see that this is a very low-hanging fruit. This can be resolved today. This can be resolved in this quarter so that rights and freedoms can be enjoyed by these employers, those who are, that is, Madam Speaker. Because
Honorable Senators, it is now 1 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. Senator Sige, you will have another 15 minutes when we resume the contribution. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until later today, Wednesday, 18th February 2026 at 2:30 p.m.
Things are crazy. Valentine is period. It's a period. Valentine is a period. And you know, I was spending more time because I wanted to drag to one. That's what I was hoping. Actually, but I saw them look at me. I saw them look at me, then I said, I signaled, I said, what do I do? So I can't. That's what I thought.